My name's Brook Horowitz and I'm Director of Business Standards and Regions with International Business Leaders Forum, IBLF. IBLF is a not-for-profit organisation based in the UK, but it's a global organisation promoting worldwide responsible business practices. And we've been working in Russia for a number of years. When Russia took over the G20 presidency at the beginning of this year, they asked us to help with a dialogue between the G20 governments and the companies of the G20 nations. That is called the B20, the Business 20. They asked us to help with a particular task force on transparency and anti-corruption, and that was really because we'd had a lot of experience of working on this subject with the business community in Russia and in other countries. So the overall B20 Task Force was coordinated this year by RSPP, the Union of Russian Entrepreneurs, which is the major business association, and its role was to instigate a dialogue with the governments of the G20 on a very wide range of issues, on financial stability, on investment and infrastructure. And one of the agenda items at the G20 this year, in fact inherited from the last 3 years of G20 summits, was corruption. Hardly surprising in a way, because the thing that all the G20 nations, a very varied group of nations, have in common is the problem of corruption. It's not only the big emerging markets that suffer from this, it's also our developed nations. Well, it's realistic or not realistic, it's essential. They have to do it. It is one of the major issues preventing development and also slowing growth. And therefore, whether they like it or not, they're going to have to address it. There are a lot of systemic problems stopping the countries from dealing with this issue, and although a lot of countries seem to want to address it, progress is still very slow. But I would say that the G20 and the B20, because this is not just a government issue, the other side of the supply and demand of corruption is the role of the companies and of business, the private sector. Working together, they've got a better chance of doing something about it than we've had at any time in the past. There's got to be more dialogue, there's got to be more work together between business and government, both at the multilateral G20, B20 level and at the national level. And it's not consistent. It happens in some countries, it happens much less in others. The ambition set forth in the G20 agenda is pushing the way forward for a closer dialogue. So it's recognizing that business can't solve this alone, and nor can governments. Working together, they've got a better chance of doing it. And also the experience of the developed nations and the emerging markets, which come together within the G20, that's another very important exchange. So at the most basic level, that exchange has got to continue, and one of the forums to do that is the G20 and the B20. Well, the Collective Action Hub has been set up by the group of companies that are behind the B20, and it's a think tank. It's a centre for the exchange of information about how collective action works, how companies, business, governments and civil society can work together on very specific projects, such as creating codes of good conduct in a particular industry, or business and government working together to eradicate corruption in public procurement. This is one of the highly sensitive issues that is confronting business today, all over the world. And there are techniques and technologies Well, it's not just a question of image, of course, it is a question of substance, and I think that everybody, including the Russian leadership, recognizes that this is a major issue and that it's quite a widespread challenge for the Russian government. A lot has been written about it. I have to say that in the G20, B20 process, we did not address particular issues relating to one country or another. However, there was a group of Russian companies that were involved in our work, and it was the first time that Russian companies have been involved in any meaningful way in the B20 process. And they got so enthusiastic about the discussion that we were having at the multilateral level that they actually came up with a whole slew of recommendations to the Russian government, which have also been published. Yes, well, it's clear that that Moscow has got the ambition to become a global financial center. To be a global financial center, at the basis of that has got to be trust. It's an issue not only in Moscow, it's an issue here in London as well, of course, and the City of London is taking quite a few steps to try and address the issue of trust. If Moscow has difficulty organising a simple public procurement bid, a tender for equipment, and the losers of that bid cry foul every time, then it's not exactly a good omen for the future of Moscow as a financial centre. So our view is that by addressing some quite simple procedural issues, almost technical issues, you depoliticize it. You address the technical issues in conducting a public tender. It should be possible to create a level of trust and confidence in the process that then Moscow can build on. And that's why we're very pleased to be involved with the Moscow government on a whole project on improving public procurement processes. We've got the major companies that participate in public tenders in Moscow, global companies that are selling millions and millions of dollars every year to the Moscow government, and the Moscow government itself. They're at the level of the deputy mayor, are highly engaged in a dialogue that's examining how Moscow improves its public procurement processes and benchmarking them against public procurement processes in other cities. We think that it's a modest step. It's not going to resolve the whole issue of corruption in the whole of Russia, but step by step, I think that this will be a very valuable contribution. Thank you.